Greetings and welcome to LGR Oddware, where we're taking a look at hardware and software that is odd, forgotten, and obsolete, like this little thing right here. Another one of those parallel port sound devices. This is the DSP DigiSpeech Plus, and as the name implies, it can do digital speech, plus other things. I think I'll let it speak for itself.
I do more than simple digitized speech. I am also Sound Blaster compatible with PCM sample playback and FM synthesizer emulation.
Yeah, that's right. In addition to its DigiSpeech standard, it's also Sound Blaster compatible with ad-lib emulation and all kinds of interesting things over a parallel printer port connection. Yeah, let's check it out. All right, it is time to check out the DSP Solutions DigiSpeech Plus, the DS311, and yes, it does come in a overwhelmingly underwhelming box, just plain white cardboard box. As far as I know, this was never sold directly to retail or anything, at least not this model. You had to get it directly through the company or through one of their partners, and this one in 1994 went for about $150, probably more or less. I can't find a concrete price, but some other similar devices from DSP were around there, so we're going with that. And yeah, DSP used to be known as DigiSpeech Incorporated. They changed it in 1993, with this DS311 having the DSP Solutions company name on there. And yeah, got some stuff inside. And yeah, thank you very much to Brandon for hooking me up with this just on loan to check out. Sent over a number of things. Awesome supporter of the show, and he included a note with this one as well. I actually recommended that I try playing Super Fighter with it and seeing how that performs. I will have to do that. An appropriate game to recommend checking out coming from the founder of Super Fighter Team. Yeah, anyway, thanks again, Brandon, because the DigiSpeech Plus is not an easy device to come across. And yeah, this is pretty much the whole thing right here. It's just a parallel port sound device packed into a little speaker housing with some I/O on there. And yeah, despite being a parallel port sound device, this is not a clone of the Covox Speech Thing or the Disney Sound Source or any of those. And that's what makes this Plus version special. This is a Sound Blaster compatible, and it's not just an OPL2 or 3 FM synth over parallel either. It's got Sound Blaster compatibility. And yeah, if we check out the documentation, you'll see a whole bunch of lovely numbers here you can peruse at your leisure. But check that out. I mean, the whole thing with this was that it was a 16-bit stereo PCM playback thing with also OPL capability, so very much like an original Sound Blaster. Not the later ones like the Pro or the 16 or anything like that. Just the OG Sound Blaster with all the kind of support that you would really expect. Quite capable, if it does what it says it does. And yet, despite the documentation saying that it's the first external sound peripheral to deliver 16-bit CD quality music with stereo audio capabilities, that's just simply not true. In fact, DSP Solutions themselves had already done it before this. And that was with the DS301A, known as the Portable Sound Plus, from 1993. Now, I don't have one of these, but V Westlife has covered that over on his YouTube channel, so check that out if you'd like to see a little bit of that being used. And really, as far as I can tell, the DigiSpeech Plus here is effectively a rehoused version of the DS301, the Portable Sound Plus. In fact, if we open it up here, here's what it looks like inside. You've basically got the same kind of guts as the Portable Sound Plus, as I understand it. There's almost all the same chips and parallel interface and all that kind of stuff being used, even the same DS301 chip that the Portable Sound Plus got its model number from, built by Texas Instruments. So it's in this triangular case that's kind of a reused thing from DigiSpeech or DSP. We'll get to that here in a sec, but yeah, it's just all packed into here instead. And on the front of it, you have a multitude of interesting things, starting with, of course, the built-in amplified speaker right there. Got a volume knob, 3.5mm external microphone input, and then outputs for headphones. You got dual outputs. I guess the idea being to have multiple users at the same computer, each one of them capable of stereo or mono headphones, and even a built-in microphone. So we'll have to give that a test. But it doesn't end there, of course. We have some things around back. So we've got a stereo on and off switch right there for changing the output for the headphones to be stereo or mono. We have line in for line level input instead of a microphone, and power going to an AC adapter 9 volt, which is this little thing right here. So yeah, it does need external power. It does not get power over parallel, at least not enough. And of course, you got that right here. Permanently attached, just a standard 25-pin printer port kind of cable that plugs into the LPT1 or 2 or whatever. And there was an optional parallel pass-through available for an additional cost if you needed to plug in your printer and the DigiSpeech at the same time. As for the type of IBM PC compatible that you could run it on, I mean, it's pretty much going to support everything depending on which mode you're going to be using. But yeah, at its most basic, you can use a DOS 3.3 PC, even one with a 4.77 MHz 8088 with 640K RAM and 1.8 megabytes of storage. It'll do it. But if you want to use any of the Sound Blaster stuff, then you'll need a 386, 2 megs of RAM, and an expanded memory manager. And it's also worth noting that it will not work with Sound Blaster applications written using DOS extenders. So no DOS 4G, 4GW stuff. And yeah, this is not the first thing that was made by DSP. In fact, yeah, before they were DSP, like I said, they were DigiSpeech Incorporated, which was founded in, I think, 1988, depending on what you read, by a Mr. Modi Katz, who is a self-described serial entrepreneur. And throughout the 80s, he had put together all kinds of different educational companies, mostly for computer software. And to quote Mr. Katz, the DigiSpeech came around purely by serendipity, saying, "In 1989, I ran into an engineer friend from Israel who came to me with an idea for audio for a computer. And this is pre-Sound Blaster." So he plugged in a shoebox full of wires into my computer and loaded a software program, and I listened to the Israeli national anthem. I was amazed and told him to go back to Israel and come back with a black box, not a shoebox, and give me something in English, not in Hebrew. Then I'll work with you. He came back with it about 4 months later, so I contacted people I knew at the IBM Education Division, and it became the standard for all IBM's educational programs. And the result of that work and the first DigiSpeech product was the DS201A, and I have one of those here too, which came in the same boring white box as the 301. And this one came along in 1990, I believe, the very first one did. Yeah, revision 1.0. The big difference with this, besides not being called the Plus and not being parallel, this is actually a serial connection thing, is that it does not have Sound Blaster compatibility. This little part is blocked as well, so you don't have that extra stuff. So yeah, this is more of just the DigiSpeech standard that it was using, and it does not do Sound Blaster or AdLib. It just kind of does its own thing, but you know, still pretty impressive. And yeah, that right there was sort of the main thing, that DigiSpeech algorithm at 1.1 kbps. It also supported PCM and CVSD, complex sound generation, and a number of other things. But yeah, you needed software that supported this. And Mr. Katz, coming from that educational software company background, that was the main intent for this, was having it used in schools and libraries, any kind of educational use that you might need. Digital speech, which was very much a thing that was in demand throughout the late 80s, early 90s, and a lot of the other devices were more costly and required opening up your computer and installing things. This didn't. Pretty cool. And it also wasn't as limited as like a Kovac speech thing. And I found this pretty amusing. I was watching an episode of Computer Chronicles a while back, and they were talking about these library computer systems, and look, there's a DigiSpeech just hanging out right there, plugged into like all of the IBM PS2s in that particular computer lab in the library. Pretty neat to see it exactly where it was intended to be used, in all kinds of educational and learning situations with software made for it. It turns out that DigiSpeech was apparently one of the very first companies to be certified as an IBM business partner, and Big Blue themselves endorsed the DS201A, resulting in it selling over 1 million units, according to Mr. Katz, with him claiming that they sold a DigiSpeech audio adapter with every IBM computer that went into schools in the USA. Yeah, I don't know about every single one of them, but either way, it was a lot, and as a result, these original DigiSpeech modules are pretty darn common. In fact, I've just got 2 of them that I've picked up on eBay over the years. It's the Pluses, the Portable Sound, and the 311 that are not common. And also, I just got to mention this really quick. While doing research for this and seeing folks talking about the original DigiSpeech, I ran across this newspaper article talking about, oh, we'll soon be swearing at computers and vice versa. Just the way this is written, I encourage you to pause the video for a second and just look at this bit of the article talking about text-to-speech. It's just hilarious looking back and knowing where we would go with computers talking to us. The early 90s. So yeah, we got the 201 and then the Portable Sound Plus and then the DigiSpeech Plus. Well, was there ever a follow-up to this? Because the other ones did decently well, especially the original DigiSpeech. The Portable Sound Plus, not as much. So it's kind of no surprise that while there was a follow-up planned in the form of the PCM-CIA Portable Sound in 1994, I'm doubtful that it was actually ever released. There's only some very brief mentions of it being announced that I can find, but that's it. And then, shortly after that, Modi Katz was ousted from DSP Solutions in 1994. An IBM guy ended up replacing him from their EduQuest division, and the company just kind of fizzled into obscurity after that. And with it, the devices themselves, especially what I believe to be their final one here, the DigiSpeech Plus. So yeah, without further rambling, let's just go ahead and get this plugged into a computer and try it out with the software it came with, as well as some games that directly support it and don't support it. You know, the AdLib Sound Blaster emulation stuff. Yeah, let's get to it. Alrighty, got the lovely compact Presario 425 going here, because I don't have a sound card in it at the moment. I did have one, but I took it out, so at the moment it's just a normal 486 computer without a sound card, just a PC speaker. I got the DigiSpeech Plus plugged into the parallel port, and I've gone ahead and installed the software. It came with 2 discs. Really all I needed was this one. This DigiNet disc really doesn't do much of anything that I can tell. I mean, it includes a lot of the same files as this one. Perhaps it was used for some other networking product that they had. I don't know, it's got some NetAUD drivers and software on there, but this is all we need for this. And I put everything in this Digi Plus directory, and that's what we get. So we can go ahead and run DG setup. And yeah, it already did this earlier, but just to give you an example of how it does it up, you just tell it which product you're looking for. So there's a few different ones. Of course, the Portable Sound Plus, which is basically the same thing. The DigiSpeech Plus CD-Net Sound. Maybe that's what this network disk is for. Whatever. DigiSpeech Plus. Anyway, you can also see some other stuff here. LPT1, it detects this as a Pentium. It's actually a 486 Overdrive, DX4, but it's okay. And yeah, IRQ7, DSP version, and all this other stuff. That doesn't really matter. Let's just play the test audio clip. Oh, yeah. I love that. It's so cheesy, perfectly mid-90s, beautiful. So, yeah, that's all you can do in here pretty much is just perform a couple of tests, make sure it's set up, and it is, because I've already done it. And there are a few other programs that it comes with here that you can use in DOS, like DigiPlay and DigiRecord. So playback and recording just through DOS, basically just handling PCM and a few other types of sound files. DS Panel, I think that's a Windows thing. Yeah, we'll get to that. A lot of these are actually Windows at the moment. PDigi is a pretty important one though. That'll have the parallel audio driver going in the background. And this is pretty much how a good number of the DigiSpeech programs or programs that support the DigiSpeech standard will know that it's there. And as far as I can tell, this actually does work for things that just support the earlier DigiSpeech as well as this one. And it allows you to mess around with the other applications that it came with. So here's DigiPlay. That's just playing the ding sound effect from Windows 3.1 that's on here. You got some stats for whatever file you're playing. Cool. Now, a couple of programs that were supposed to be on here, at least according to the manuals, you got DOS Talk and DOS Reader, some text-to-speech programs, you know, DigiSpeech. But for some reason, they're not included on the discs that it came with. And they're not included on my other ones either for my other, the serial ones. So I decided to check out the Portable Sound Plus drivers. Just downloaded a copy of those on archive.org. And they are in here. So we can just run dr.bat, for instance.
Welcome to DOS Reader.
DOS Reader. So let's open up one of the sample files that it came with.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Even though the sound of it is really quite atrocious, if you say it loud enough you really sound precocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Indeed. And of course you can change all of the standard options: pitch, speed, volume, and filter. But yeah, here it is, just with all the things changed around.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
And naturally, you can just have it read whatever text files are on your system, so...
Sometimes, falls and farts, and other such nonsense that has somehow become required on LGR. Life is up.
Yes, it is, DOS Reader.
Thank you for using DOS Reader.
You're very welcome, DOS Reader. You noticed it says Speech V4 engine. There's also a V3 engine. I believe those are also just compatible with the earlier DS201. And also, I don't remember where it is in the manual, but there is several mentions of it being backwards compatible or just simultaneously compatible with the IBM speech adapters. But I haven't been able to get that to work. I don't know precisely which driver is needed. It just says it needs drivers, and I thought it would be those speech engine things. But I guess not. Not an absolute ton of games that use it from what I can tell, but there were a good number of educational titles and IBM software, and yeah, I just haven't gotten those to work. You'll see it listed as the IBM speech card or speech adapter, sometimes the PS2 speech adapter. So it seems like it would support that, and I do have one of those speech adapter cards in the little breakout box, which is pretty similar looking to that, just flatter. I'd like to cover that at some point in the future, so I'm not going to worry too much about getting it to run on this, especially because it was largely educational software. But one thing that will work, there were a few games that were released that specifically supported the DigiSpeech. You can see digisp.com there. This is one of GameTech's Jeopardy releases for DOS. I think it's the 1993 one, maybe 92. And yeah, it specifically supports the DigiSpeech standard, so you don't even need to put it into Sound Blaster emulation mode in order to get it to work. There's no music. That relies on other things, and it can't run those simultaneously with the DigiSpeech as far as I can tell. But let's just get into the game. Yeah, that works. I'm going to switch over to a direct recording of the DigiSpeech here.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Jeopardy! Here we go, round one. One daily double will appear on the board in these categories. That's it.
And yeah, I mean, it sounds very crunchy, very low fidelity, but it's not super far off necessarily from a Sound Blaster, like an early, like an early 8-bit Sound Blaster through some crappy speakers. It is really noisy, and hearing that direct recording, it kind of makes it sound even worse when you got like headphones or actually good speakers. But just on its own, it's perfectly serviceable and kind of comparable to like a Kovacs speech thing, maybe a little bit better. However, things get much more interesting when you go into Sound Blaster emulation mode. You have this B Master driver that says for the portable sound, but yeah, it also just works fine with the DigiSpeech Plus because it's basically the same thing. It has IRQ7 set there, doesn't bother with DMA or anything, that's just not a thing. And AdLib seems to pretty much work the same as an original Sound Blaster, you know, caveats of course. So we can go into just any Sound Blaster game that is not going to be relying on DOS extensions, you know, DOS 4GW, that kind of thing. Even if you do the set blaster settings and try to force something, it doesn't recognize that at all. It just is this driver, and the driver will not work with later DOS games with the DOS extension. Doom, Duke 3D, Quake, SimCity 2000, none of that's going to get any sound under DOS with this driver. Wolf 3D, on the other hand, will, and see, it detects the Sound Blaster right there. And there's an example of the AdLib emulation. It's not great, but it's definitely not the worst I've ever heard, by a long shot. So yeah, I'm gonna switch back over to a direct recording of the DigiSpeech Plus with some Wolf 3D. Yeah, honestly, it's not that bad. I mean, you know, again, that's kind of one of those games, though, that you can get on other parallel devices sounding pretty good, like the Disney Sound Source, for example. So let's do something that I don't think that could do. And specifically, Brandon mentioned it anyway. Yeah, Super Fighter. I think it has either a setup or an install. Yeah, here we go. Does not support the DigiSpeech, like Wolf 3D. So it's relying completely on the emulation to do it. So let's do that, get this going, and I'll just play some gameplay. Again, recorded directly through the DigiSpeech through audio cable.
Round one, fight!
Yeah, so he was not kidding when he said it was struggling with that. It really has a problem playing the emulated AdLib and emulated Sound Blaster sounds like PCM and FM Synth at the same time. It doesn't, at least in DOS, seem to be able to do that with anything I've tried it with. In fact, another good example of that is Duke Nukem 2. And yeah, I'm gonna switch over again to a direct capture of the sound. Just listen to this, the music and the sound effects not being able to play on top of each other. Yeah, that's a thing. And another kind of quirk is something that I've noticed on a number of Sound Blaster clones as well, with certain Epic games and other shareware titles. It will detect the Sound Blaster and the AdLib with that driver going, but with games like Zargun here, there are no sound effects, just the AdLib, or the imitation of it. Yeah, no sounds. Again, though, the AdLib emulation is not too bad. All right, one last thing I want to try and DOS here real quick before we go into Windows. That is Epic Pinball, because it has all that awesome tracker music and PCM sound effects, no AdLib at all. And so it sounds okay, extremely lo-fi and crunchy. So it's not ideal, Even worse than an 8-bit Sound Blaster, I think. But tolerable. Yeah, I'm gonna switch over into direct capture here. Yeah, it definitely sounds like you're listening to it through a wet sock inside of a tin can going through a trash compactor, but it's there and it's coming through the parallel port, which is just awesome. So let's go into Windows. Yeah, just got the standard little startup sound playing there because it has DigiSpeech drivers going. So check that out. DSP Solutions Parallel Audio 4.05. And you can select from the same few models that you can in DOS, at least with this particular set of drivers. It functions like any other sound device in Windows 3.1. We do have some additional control panel thingies here, and it changes the cursor and everything. We got a test sound file for Windows. Yeah. And it just loops forever. But it allows you to change the volume. You know, here we go. This is something else that's kind of interesting too. Mix wave and synth. So we do that and you'll listen to the sound quality change. Yeah. So the way this works is in this mode, it's only going to be playing wave or I guess the synth, either one, depending on what the program needs or is playing back. With this one mixed together, it's kind of doing where the MIDI playback and PCM won't play over each other. It just sort of goes back and forth, and the sound effects take priority over the synth. So we'll just leave it like this right here. And check this out. We have the DSP Sound Station. It came with just a nice little sound recorder and playback editor kind of thing. The recording format. DSP 80 PCM, 11 kilohertz, 3-bit. And I do have an external mic plugged in because for whatever reason I haven't been able to get the internal one to really work, or it's just like so noisy that nothing's coming through. It's a noisy device regardless, but it seems to work better with an external mic, so here we go. And testing the recording of the thing. Yeah. Wonderful mono 3-bit 11 kilohertz DSP thing. And you get a whole bunch of other options as well. Look at all those compression things. Let's go straight PCM. I think this is the highest quality one it does. More or less. 16-bit sample size, 22 kilohertz mono. Yeah. Here it is in the higher PCM, whatever the heck. You know, it is what it is. Again, kind of comparable to an OG Sound Blaster in that respect. And you can save it as WAV files. And you can open WAV files. That lovely one from the test program earlier. So yeah, that's what it comes with in Windows. Not a whole lot. But of course, being a standard Windows sound device, you can play games and it'll work. So that's fun. Yeah. Again, that ad-lib emulation. It's just using it for MIDI playback here, but it's just odd. Some things they sound pretty good and some doesn't sound very good at all. And yeah, there are no sound effects. In fact, let me just blow up a bunch of stuff. It won't play sound effects at all unless you go back to, not this, right here, and do the mix thing. Oh, that music. Anyway, now we have sounds. And it does mix them together, but I can't tell if it's just like, I don't know, if it's overriding the sound of the music because it's just so darn loud. I don't know, it does seem to do a better job of mixing them together as it does in DOS, come to think of it. Interesting results regardless. So yeah, that's about it for this thing, I suppose. You can just use it as a normal sound card, even though it's not a card. It's just going through parallel. It's pretty awesome in my book. And yeah, let's just play us out with some Canyon.mid, just standard MIDI playback with that funky FM synth emulation that it's got going on. Yeah. Weirdness, man. It just misses all kinds of instruments. You just never know with sound devices, and that's why this is so fun to me. Well, one of many reasons being this particular piece of oddware, but yeah. That's what this is. Yeah, I'm really enamored by this little thing. It's the fact that it does Sound Blaster compatibility, even if a little lackluster. But I mean, it's doing all that over just a parallel port, man. This is nuts in my mind. I know you can do all kinds of things over parallel. You know, there are even video capture devices that went over parallel, but there's something about having a Sound Blaster compatible over that particular interface that is just fascinating to me. And I'm just glad that it exists, especially because Creative Labs never made anything quite like this. They were going to. There was actually a device called the Port Blaster that was supposed to come out in 1992, but despite being hyped up and advertised and even appearing in a Creative Labs catalog or two, it never came out. This, on the other hand, absolutely did. Maybe not in very high numbers. In fact, the Portable Sound Plus is easier to find than this. But yeah, it's neat, isn't it? I think it's neat, though I really do still wish that it worked with games that required DOS extenders, any DOS 4GW kind of games, Duke 3D in particular being a personal favorite. Would have been really cool to hear coming out of this thing with Sound Blaster emulation, but who knows, maybe somebody can come up with some kind of software or driver layer to go on top of this and make it work with this and the Portable Sound Plus. I don't know, there's probably not much of a demand for that. Anyway, that's about it for this piece of oddware. That demo music. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode of LGR Oddware. Do check out any number of the others. I've got some linked here, and more episodes of Oddware and other LGR things are always in the works with new videos each week. So stay tuned for those. And as always, thanks for watching.